We have no attendees tonight. Cool. All right, well, with that, with no public, there's probably no public communication. So we'll move on to the next item of our agenda, which is work session number 5 on Thurston 2045 update on public outreach. And I think that we have Maya and Miriam that are going to be doing it.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Maya Teeple, Senior Planner. I do want to note that we do have 2 members from the public. I think they probably signed off and back on because the boardroom was muted at the initial part of the meeting. So, Chair, I don't know if you are interested in asking those folks if they have public comment again.
Actually, I would. So if Loretta or Bob would like to address the Planning Commission, we'd be more than happy to give you 3 minutes to address us if either one of you wants to raise your hand or be promoted, or Phyllis for that matter. If anybody would like to provide public comment, now's the time. Well, thank you anyways. We'll move on. Thank you, Maya.
Not a problem. Thank you, Planning Commission. Maya Teeple, Senior Planner with Community Planning. I'm joined tonight by outreach experts Miriam and Dana in the room with you, and we have a short PowerPoint to go over some of our public outreach efforts for Thurston 2045. And then I will be giving a little bit of an overview. Sorry, my computer's freezing. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Great. I'll give a little bit of an overview of the schedule moving forward as a teaser. So today's work session, as I just mentioned, will do an update on the public engagement efforts. We have been going to a lot of events and stakeholder meetings recently, and some of the major themes that we're hearing from our community and their top priorities. And then I will go into an update on some of the project management side and the schedule moving forward for Thurston 2045, things like our request for proposals for consultants to work on portions of the plan update, internal cross-coordination among our staff and departments, and then just a quick glance at schedule going forward. We're not asking any action from the Planning Commission tonight on this. This is just informational for your knowledge, and happy to take any questions if you have them at the end of the presentation. So for the public that are joining us online, and also as a refresher for the Planning Commission, this is Thurston 2045, which is the county's periodic update. The periodic update does happen on a 10-year cycle, and that's the big update to all of the comprehensive plan policies and development regulations to bring them up to speed with state law. Typically, our board opts for a few additional items as part of that process as well. This plans for the next 20 years, so we'll be looking out to 2045 and updating all of our population projections and building intensities associated with that. And it ensures we're consistent with any changes under state law, like the new climate changes and housing changes that have come down. This is not a full repeal and replace of the comprehensive plan. It's also not a full revisioning, but we will be doing some of that visioning work with the community, and we already are doing some of that visioning work through a couple of surveys that have gone out. And this is due statutorily on June 30th of 2025, which is rapidly coming closer to us. So not a lot of time to do a significant amount of work. Just looking at the timeline, you've seen this before. If anything, this will shift to the right, so out further. But at this time, right now, we are in phase 2, which is our primary initial outreach stage, and also internal review of the plan, going through state law, and just combing through our plan and making sure that we mark areas where we will need to be making updates and start making those updates. And so this stage we plan to go through spring of next year, and hopefully beginning in March of next year, we'll be returning to the Planning Commission with some draft changes and rolling those items out. Most of 2024, we have planned to be with Planning Commission on the Thurston 2045 and the elements associated with that. And then the board's review will start rolling out in late fall next year into early 2025. That's the hopeful timeline. So goals of public engagement, the goal is to reach everyone, although we know that that's not always feasible, and also to provide information to folks that is accessible and easily understandable and inclusive. So we have made some changes with this round of outreach compared to our last periodic update. We've started contacting some underrepresented groups and had some meetings with those folks, which our outreach staff will talk about tonight. And we've also translated some of our surveys and flyers into the top languages that we have here in Thurston County based on census data. We are also looking to seek input from the community on their priorities and what proposed changes they want to see. So we're getting a lot of that information already through some of our survey responses, and providing opportunities for the public not only to participate in the process, but to ask questions and understand the impacts of the feedback they give us. So not everyone's concern is necessarily included at the end of the day. It's ultimately the board's decision, but just outlining what that process really looks like for the community and how their feedback plays into the plan update. And now I'm going to hand it over to Miriam and Dana to take over the rest of the presentation, and I'll click through the slides for them.
I mostly want to be here. I think Maya described me as a public engagement specialist, and while I will own that. I am a natural resource planner still, and we do a lot of public engagement, and my old hats were in that realm, and so I just bring that expertise along with me. And I just wanted to segue and kind of lead into this because I was able to talk to you all in the September 20th meeting about one of the engagement activities. And it was so valuable to us to bring more of that, because that activity was not done in isolation. It was not one thing. And actually that specific activity wasn't even necessarily just what we did in different locations. We, had different outreach depending. So, I just wanted to come and let you know that was one thing. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but there's so much more engagement that we did. And we know that that is really the heart of what we're trying to do and the new things that we're really working on, and to really engage with you because you all have great ideas and have a different window into the community. You are such a part of us reaching out and bringing your lens back to us. So wanted to make sure if you had any questions or any further thoughts about what we've done, that we can extend more into this work. Basically, Miriam has been a champion of all this work. And so I'm going to turn the rest of the presentation over to her and just be a supportive person.
Take it away, Miriam. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam Diasian. I'm Education and Outreach Specialist for Community Planning and the Stormwater Utility. I, along with Dana, have been working on the outreach and the public participation for the comprehensive plan. In general, too, I've just been working to make messaging more accessible, diversify our audiences across all of our planning and stormwater programs. So this is just a piece of that. We had a really busy summer over the summer. So we attended lots of events across the far corners of the county, trying to reach as many diverse audiences we don't typically reach. This word cloud here kind of shows you kind of a list of a lot of these events that we went to. Two of them haven't taken place yet, the Hispanic Roundtable Summit and the Asho Cultural Center. So we're doing some more things with them as well. I'm not going to list all of these off, but I do want to highlight some of them and talk to you about some of the things we heard and how those went. So Dia de la Familia was an event held by Cielo, which is a local nonprofit that works with the Latinx community in Thurston County and other, kind of surrounding areas. We did have an interpreter with us, and she had the survey with her. So it was a really great way to connect with that community and make them feel heard and us being able to understand each other. We had a lot of really good conversation about supporting the unhoused communities, about making their communities safe and ensuring that they have access to clean water. So there was kind of some of the highlights there. We went to the Juneteenth event in Lacey, and this was a really good one to collect survey responses because they were giving away a free, really amazing barbecue meal. So there were these like huge lines. And so I just had a stack of clipboards with the surveys and a tablets, and we just like down the line and then go back through and then collect them. It was really effective. So any event that has a really long line, that's where you want to get your survey collections. So some of the key things I heard at this event was there was a lot of frustration about the affordability of living in the county with housing, not keeping up with the wages, basically. One gentleman was kind of expressing his frustration about his son that just moved back in and his worry for him about being able to even, survive in the county on the wage he's working. There was a young mother, she had a kid in one hand and a stroller in the other one. And she was actually filled out her survey responses for her because her hands were a little bit full. So, but she expressed concern about having more events that were inclusive, like the one she was attending, because she felt safe there, whereas other events she might not have felt quite as safe. So that was a really good kind of learning moment there too. The Nisqually Pride and Health Fair that's put on by the Nisqually tribe members.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I missed it. What was the name of that last group you just talked about?
The Juneteenth event in Lacey.
Thank you.
I think City of Lacey put it on, right?
City, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And the ones I'm highlighting, we definitely plan on going again next year too. So then the Nisqually Pride and Health Fair, there was a younger audience there. So teens and young adults. And so that was a really great way to get in touch with that demographic, as well as the Nisqually tribe members. A lot of what we heard there was protecting our natural resources and again, ensuring we have clean water and clean air for the generations to come. Rainier Roundup and Tenino Farmers Market. We went to those and that was a great way to kind of connect with the rural community of those areas. And some of the highlights from that was lowering property taxes and also supporting agriculture and just keeping their rural community rural. So those were kind of the highlights there. And then Dana, she attended the Rochester Back to School Bash. And so I did want to turn it back over to her for just a second to talk about that.
Maya, do you mind putting the slides forward just one step?
Next slide, please.
Oh, yes, that's how we say that.
Yeah.
So the first picture is the Back to School Bash, and I just wanted to bring it up as I was talking about it because you didn't get to see it when I talked about it last time. And the activity that we did was essentially like a voting activity for kids. We had 7 different jars that kids could put a penny in, and we gave them 5 pennies. And we said, which jars would you put your penny in? Which one do you think needs the most support? Which one do you think we need to put the most energy into? And most of the kids picked healthy water, healthy nature and water. And I lumped them into categories that were a little bit more accessible for children so that we could talk about them from a standpoint. And it was really great because it also, as I gave clipboards to parents and the kids were doing the activity, it was a conversation starter for the parents because the parents were talking to the kids about where they should put their coins and giving them tips and like trying to educate them as we were going a little bit. And so just the conversations around, again, affordable housing, like that really was a huge echo of this event as well. And then, being in Rochester, having families walk by and say, y'all can change everything you're doing, and having people just not participate. And knowing that is part of the frustration of our community, that exists, and that's part of a mentality. So knowing that we can reach out in the community and get some feedback and, use that in a way to shape and guide the work that we're doing with the comprehensive plan, hopefully reaches out to our community and says, we are listening, and the things that we're doing, the things we're focusing on are your priorities. So,
yeah.
Did you want to talk a little bit more about the other pictures?
Yeah, so these are just photos of some of the other events we did. You can see a lot of the branding is actually Stream Team. So Stream Team is the public facing brand of the REAP. Partnership, which is Regional Environmental Education Partnership. It's a multi-jurisdictional partnership with the cities of Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and then Thurston County. So we focus on stormwater education outreach. Like I said, one of my main positions is doing stormwater education and outreach. So I was kind of using Stream Team as our kind of hook to talk about the really cool programs we have with like Marine Creature Monday and stream bug monitoring, and had a really cool salmon craft. And then I could loop in and tie in the comprehensive plan update and talk to them about the importance of filling out the survey and getting involved. So it was kind of a nice little segue and a way to kind of grab them. The middle picture there, that's actually my 7-year-old daughter who spent lots of time with me this summer. She would not let me go to an event without her. She was crazy good help and would like help me put up the tent and everything. It was insane. And, you know, if you have a 7-year-old come up to you with a clipboard and talk to you about the comprehensive plan and that you should fill out the survey because it's good for you, your kids and their kids, you fill out that survey. So she was also really good at kind of connecting kids, which was also really something I've been trying to integrate. I've had a lot of really cool conversations with kids about how just because you're not old enough to vote doesn't mean that you can't, you know, get involved with your local government and be part of shaping their future. You know, think in 20 years, like, what are you going to be? You know, you're like 5 years old right now. Can you even imagine that? Like, no. I know when I was 5, I thought we'd have flying cars, and here we are. We still don't really have them.
So close.
So close. With all of these events that we had, there were kind of some key takeaways, some key points, and I've kind of touched on them before. Affordable housing. People want affordable housing. They want to be able to live in this amazing county that we live in. They want continued access to clean air and clean water. They want rural communities to stay rural. They want to feel safe in their communities. And one kind of surprising thing was actually people were appreciative that we just showed up. So even though some people were just kind of frustrated with us in general, there were a lot of people that were just like, thanks for being here and even just, you know, having your presence here. So that was a pretty cool thing. Next slide, please. So in order to track the equitable public participation, I've been using the equity index to track our engagement. So this is a mapping tool developed for the REAP partnership, which is the partnership I mentioned in the previous slide with the other jurisdictions. It identifies access to opportunities across the county, as well as underserved communities using a whole slew of available data that we have. So for the last 2 surveys, I've been asking for people's zip codes to ensure that we are reaching all parts of the community. Moving forward, we're actually going to have a clickable map so that people can click their census block group, which is how the equity index is grouped. And that way we can get a clearer picture of who we're reaching and then what level of risk or opportunities those areas might have.
I just want to say, I've been pushing that equity map for, like ever since it came out, so I'm.
This right now,
thrilled
this
you're using
tool is being used by REAP. We're working currently with the county to see where we can apply it here, so.
Can you tell us what the blue represents?
That was even higher opportunity, so, yeah, I missed that one, but yes.
My geography is not perfect. Is Grand Mound in the green or the orange? Yellow.
I believe it's orange. Grand Mound is actually yellow and orange there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Highway 99 and you can see Highway 12 going over that way. A
This,
little bit.
this tool, we just kind of have started using this, and so we're learning more about it. And as we kind of get more into it and work more with the rest of the county, we can probably come back and give you a little, this was just the teaser of this. I could probably fill you in a little more about some other details.
And can I just add, there's also, I mean, Puget Sound Regional Council has another mapping tool that hasn't been applied to Thurston County yet. That's kind of a, you know, it's like the equity index, but it's an opportunity index, and it's also quite interesting.
Nice. We just
You
saw a
know, it
really cool
uses
tree
some
canopy.
different, you know, different data. So you might want to take a look at that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they interweave.
Do you want to take questions now or at the end of the conversation?
I'm good either way.
I just like to know what the definition of each of those is. High risk, elevated risk, average, elevated opportunity, high opportunity.
There is, without going too full into details, are a whole slew of data that basically had to be normalized using Z-scores to come up with kind of these ratings. And so high risk is like you might be in a low income area that doesn't have access to a library or a grocery store or transportation or things like that, or healthcare. So that's basically how that risk or opportunity is measured.
Okay, and high opportunity would mean,
You are in an affluent area with access to all
All
of
those
those
things.
opportunities.
Okay.
Yep. Next slide, please. So there's more to do. I feel like we're just kind of getting started. We spent a lot of time this year trying out new things, building relationships, going to events we've never been to before. We're gonna take the lessons learned over this last summer, this last year, continue building those relationships, maybe forge some new ones. We have kind of a pretty good overview of the events now in Thurston County, so I feel like that's one of the things another thing I was really trying to do was figure out which events are good for this sort of outreach. Some events are too big, and so you can't really make these connections, and then some are too small and you're just talking to, 5 or 6 people. So we found some good middle ground there. We also just started working with the public health homeless response manager and figuring out ways to engage with the lived experience housing steering committee to make sure that the voices of the unhoused are also heard and in this process as well. So that is a fairly new partnership, and so we'll have more development on that later. We're going to continue focus presentations to various groups, post regular updates on the new website. They have a cool little blog feature, so we're going to try that out with posting some kind of blog posts on a fairly regular basis, as well as continuing to use our constant contact email distributions that we use. We're reaching groups we've never reached before, and so we're doing things differently. In order to reach these groups, you're going to have to do things differently. So we're trying to really meet people where they are, try out new things, kind of learn and grow about what works and doesn't work. We do have a list that I think we got from a previous meeting from you guys of different groups that we could reach out to. So we've been working off of that list as well. But if you have any suggestions about other groups or other events or anything like that, please let us know, because we're definitely trying to hit a lot of these groups. We'd love to hear about it. So I started this summer of events, basically, yes.
Just asking for more events. Are you familiar with the CLO event that's happening, I think next month,
It's like the holiday event.
it's, a Christmas, Santa Claus type of thing at the Armory.
We'll be there with Stream Team. I partner with Olympia, and
You know about it. Cool.
And Olympia liked my idea of taking the comprehensive plan, so she's going to also talk about the comprehensive plan. So I'm gonna let her take this one and not really push too hard on but I will have surveys.
150 to 200 people waiting in line.
Yeah.
I love
Their event was great. So yeah, we'll be at that one.
Cool.
And with Stream Team, we've actually been developing this close partnership with CLO and having some of those events specifically for them, where we have translators at some of these stream monitoring and marine creature events. So
Part of the relationship
it's
development.
part of the relationship developing. And next year, we're gonna work on co-creating a new program with them.
Is there anything at Grange's? Like, I know that one in South Bay does a huge strawberry festival in June, but they do dances
a
and
good
other
one.
types of events.
Yeah, that is a good one. The Rainier Roundup that wasn't at the Grange though, but they did have an event, I think, attached to that. So, but we can look at that. That's some more events that are held at Granges, so. So yeah, I had 2 kind of main goals this summer when I started this. One was just kind of connect with the community. And then the other was to get survey responses. I feel like we achieved those goals. We really kind of started to get to know the community a little bit more, show our face a little bit more. And then we've received so far over 300 survey responses, and most of those are from those events. We're just now doing kind of more of the digital push of the survey, so we expect to get more. But really, this summer was focused on those in-person touches and getting those in-person results, which is a lot more work than just boosting a Facebook post. So, which we're doing that too. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear about this. If you have any questions or any other suggestions, we're happy to hear them.
And I do wanna, I wanna take like just a second to appreciate that it's all of this that you're hearing about. It's really been these 2 people. We don't have a big team. They've got a full workload in addition to all this outreach, and they're doing it and leading with a lot of heart.
Speaking of work, in addition to this, I need to check out because I need to get the forest land conversion paperwork ready for the board. Thank you very much for your time. I know Miriam can handle your questions. I
Yep.
just wanted to support her. Thank you.
Anna.
You're welcome.
I didn't see the county fair on your list of.
Oh, yes,
events.
it's really, we were there.
The whole time.
Yes, the whole, most of the time.
One of the other groups that would get your farmers and agriculture and stuff like that might be your 4-H organizations in the county.
My kids are in the Yom 4-H, and so have been actually considering trying to.
Because I know there's some larger meetings of 4-H organizations in the county and the state, other than just the local 4-H groups.
We're also working for the survey anyway. I'm about to do like a peach jar push for the flyers for all the schools. Not all the schools use it, but I'm gonna try to see. I've never used peach jar before. That's the school district send out flyers, and instead of peppering the parents who already get enough emails, they kind of send like a consolidated email with flyers, and you kind of can ask to be involved in that. So
Have you done anything with next door neighbor?
haven't used Nextdoor. I don't know if we've used have an account we do for stormwater, but I don't know if we have for planning. But that's one we could look at.
It's targeted for geographical locations. It's a good way to get information out there about surveys
Yeah.
and meetings.
You guys have a social media policy that limits how you can engage each of those kind of services, don't you? Is it
Yes, I don't know
flexible enough that you
Nextdoor is
can
one
move
that's,
around?
I don't know if Nextdoor is used that often by the county.
Water
But
will
with,
have to wear earmuffs if you use it.
but with the
There's a
Facebook,
lot on there.
with promoting the Facebook post, you can target with the geographic area. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, you're using Facebook.
Mhm.
And I would say one of the asks of the planning commissioners, if you're on Nextdoor,
Yeah.
sharing it,
Share
it's gonna
it.
mean a lot more coming from someone they know and
Mhm.
post regularly or interfaces on there regularly than someone from the county.
Yeah, I mean,
You
if
also
we,
want to hear your screen name, Barry.
if we have a list of the events that you're going to, where the surveys are gonna be available and stuff like that, then we could do that.
Okay.
But we don't have that.
No, well, this summer a lot of it was opportunistic,
I
and
understand.
sometimes I'd like find out about an event, I was like, ooh, that's one I wanna go to, and then I would just try to go. But next year I could be a little more strategic.
Yeah, looking ahead to next year, you were, I think at the last time we were talking about this, there was a plan to sort of do some stuff that was more chapter by chapter. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? What you're thinking about at this point, about how you're going to break it out and try to get public input, more focused?
I can take that question if you'd like, Miriam.
You talking about this?
Sorry?
You talking about this list of all the
Yeah,
chapters?
right. And there's like sort of well, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question. So we do plan to do, as we move into 2024, targeted stakeholder group presentations. So I'd say in the last 3 months, we've probably had about 10 stakeholder group presentations, but they are pretty much a form presentation, give or take 1 or 2 slides. So it's the same general information at this point. Once we have some draft changes moving into the new year, the plan is to start presenting on that specific information. And we're hearing from a lot of these groups that the things they want us to come back and present on are climate, housing, environment, any sort of land use and zoning changes that might be trickling down through this update. Those are kind of the big hitters that we're hearing a lot of groups want us to come back and present on, and then there'll be opportunity for feedback from those groups. In addition to that, we'll probably be doing some targeted surveys on specific chapters, but that'll depend on what those updates look like. So Olympia has done some survey work already for their specific chapters. I think they just released one recently on their natural environment or their recreation chapter, something around there, and we'll follow suit with that and have some survey specific questions for chapter updates as we move into 2024.
And then a related question, you know, as it gets more refined and as you go back, you know, you circle back, which is, it's good, you're sort of, you know, talking about it that way. Are you also thinking about ways that you can get you know, like provide information for the public to respond to? I'm just thinking, you know, like as you gather the data, and I'm sure you'll be putting a lot of gathered data on the website and studies and all that kind of stuff. Are you thinking about how you can make the public aware of that material as it becomes available, especially to that interested public that you've already kind of connected with?
Yeah, and I think Miriam outlined some of the tools that we're both tools we've used in the past and new tools that we'll be trying out. Things like blog updates, that's something completely new. We sent out a lot of emails, and so sometimes people don't always read them. That could potentially be a better tool for us to get those updates out when there's new studies that come out. Making sure folks know they're available online to look at and provide feedback on. And then our typical suspects like Facebook, Twitter, using the constant contact webmail for this project. That'll be used primarily for meetings and for bigger studies that come out or survey results that we get, and then letting folks know how their survey results will be included in the plan moving forward. But at a higher level, the goal is to do some internal changes, take that information out to the public, incorporate their feedback, and as you mentioned, it'll be phased, so it's not going to be kind of an all at once thing. We'll be taking the information as it becomes available, and then after we incorporate that feedback back into the plan, Planning Commission review will start. So the last time we did this, we did a little bit of outreach before we took it to Planning Commission, but the bulk of that outreach was really already when we were at the Planning Commission stage. This time we're trying to front load some of that outreach before we ever have drafts that go to Planning Commission so we can incorporate it up front.
Does anybody else have questions for Maya?
I just want to commend you and Dana for this broadened outreach and encourage you to continue. And
We will.
your daughter is adorable, and I hope you're gonna give her a big cut of that big raise you're about to get.
I think she's got a good future in local government.
Does anybody else have any more questions on this particular item? Or any more updates from staff, or is this?
Maya's continuing to the sort of the next phase. Miriam will stay because I'm sure we'll circle back around to outreach, but
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just cover kind of looking forward and the more project management side and rolling updates out to the Planning Commission. So some of the near-term updates I can provide, a request for proposals is slated to go out on Friday this week. So it'll be open until December 1st. And we're looking to hopefully get a list of several consultants that can complete components of that update. And that request for proposals covers primarily climate, housing, development regulations associated to those two pieces, and then the environmental review and environmental impact statement. So those are kind of the big ones. There will be other consultant opportunities. So Ashley and I are having conversations with some of our existing partners like Thurston Regional Planning Council, who have expertise to complete other components like the transportation chapter. Some of this slide has changed. So economic and health were two optional elements that the board had elected to include in the scope of work back in May of this year. And through the budget discussions, they have not allocated us the additional $210,000 we needed for professional services money to complete those optional updates. So there are a couple of items that will be falling off the scope of work. And this is hot off the press, like Monday, we kind of found this out for sure and more definitively. So we'll be updating the scope of work materials online and also our presentations going forward to the public. So a couple of items will be falling off. Economic and health chapters are two of those items, and then the future land use update and incorporating the industrial land study will also be pulled out of the periodic update process.
And sorry, just really
Mhm.
quiet.
Yep.
So, you know, budget deliberations were last week. That's where we currently stand. Of course, it hasn't been finalized, but we do want to, you know, share what we know as we know it, because the planning commission had a lot of feedback.
When they're
On
$4
that.
million short for the budget year of 2024, it's gonna be a problem.
Just while that just got brought up, can you kind of tell us where the industrial land survey stands right now? Like, is it gonna be completed and published, or, and when, or?
Yeah,
This year.
I'll let you expand on that one.
Yeah, so the consultant is very close. They're finalizing some of the recommendations, policy finding, excuse me, policy findings that are going to go into that report. And we do have a tentative briefing date with the Board of County Commissioners on December 7th for the consultants to go through that report. That briefing date is contingent on the consultants completing the report by that date, but we expect that by the end of November, we should have that report finalized, you know, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So very, very soon. And once that is received, a final version of that report, it'll be online, made widely available to the public. We'll do a push to the public. We have a lot of very interested folks and community members in that report. So it will be widely disseminated.
So I've a couple thoughts on the RFP, and I know this is not necessarily planning commission's purview, but just a couple of thoughts. I know of a couple other funding opportunities coming through the Department of Commerce, so it might be worth, if it's still at all possible, building that RFP so it's scalable for new funding opportunities that come in. The Department of Commerce is still sitting on integrating salmon recovery into comprehensive planning grants. And then also there's going to be about $1 million available to implement components of the sound choices checklist that the Department of Natural Resources developed.
I think, well, you can touch on this too, but I think it was written to be flexible, not knowing what was going to be even coming out of our own budget deliberations. But Maya, do you have any concerns that it's not flexible enough?
No, there's a ballpark number in there, but because we're looking at potentially hiring multiple consultants from this work, there's quite a bit of flexibility in how we do that and where the funding is allocated from, provided if there's new grant funding that comes down, we can certainly consider that and roll it in. We're not held to staying under that dollar amount in the RFP if there's additional funding sources that can support the work.
Good news.
Thank you for sharing those.
And then the last bullet point on this slide, some of the concerns that we've heard not only from the Planning Commission, but also from the community is just cross coordination and ensuring consistency across the whole plan. So all of these chapters touch one another. And even though we typically roll them out kind of one by one as we're completing updates, some of the concerns we've heard from the community is making sure they're well integrated and that they speak well to each other. So just within the last month and a half, we've started our internal project team. We have about 15, 16, 17 folks on that team, mostly from community planning, but also other departments across the county. We have some technical experts on that team that will need to review portions of the plan. And that's really kind of our think tank, essentially, where we're all going to meet. It's mostly been project management up to this point, but as we start moving through these updates, we can bring kind of hot topic issues and have broader discussions on how these chapters integrate with one another. So That's kind of a new thing that we haven't done in the past, and we're excited internally about that. It gives a little bit of a hoorah to the whole process. So looking forward for Planning Commission's review, depending on budget decisions from the board, the pink schedule that was included in your packet might adjust slightly. Some of these things might fall off. But generally, we are hoping to start review with the Planning Commission on the specific chapters in March of next year. The easiest chapters will be coming to you first. So things like the introduction that has some of the background information and the vision statements, and then some of the more informational appendices will come first, the glossary. And then as we move through the year, next year, we'll be bringing other chapters. There are some lighter chapters that'll come earlier, like capital facilities, utilities. Those are pretty easy updates for us to do in-house. And then the bigger items like climate, housing, development regulations associated with those things, implementation plan appendix, those will all come at the end. And the implementation plan appendix is probably the last thing that we'll bring to the Planning Commission, so you have the context of all the chapters. I know they're all intertwined. It won't be like a sequential order, and we can certainly talk about how they weave into other chapters when we bring those items through to Planning Commission. But we do want to keep the ball rolling, given the tight timeline that we're on under the state. And finally, our thought in moving this process forward is similar to the last update with the Planning Commission in having one public hearing. And that public hearing will cover all of the chapters and topics. And so there are a couple of ways that we could approach that public hearing. I have the thought of maybe we just cancel a meeting, a Wednesday meeting, and do it on a Saturday, and we can break it up by topic if we want to, or we can just kind of have a free-for-all that might be a couple hours long for community members to come and testify at. Some of the other city jurisdictions are doing hearings by chapter, but that gets really burdensome for our community members to have to go to several public hearings and then not being able to comment on chapters once the Planning Commission has already received comment on those. So to us, it makes a little bit more sense to hold off and hold a single public hearing for our community where they can come testify at.
Commissioner Pessinger, do you have something?
Yeah, thank you. On those items you mentioned, can you clarify for us? You talked about there was no funding for economic health, future land use, and integrating industrial lands report. But we have these titles and sections for health and for land use and for economic. Does that mean there's not hiring of a consultant to provide additional detail, but we are still going to cover and address those chapters? Or do they get wiped out because there's no funding for this?
It means that we won't be dedicating staff time or hiring a consultant to complete those chapters. The exception is if there are things like climate changes or housing changes that weave into those chapters, we would of course go in and update policies related to those things, but we won't be spending, we hadn't budgeted staff time for that. It was really kind of a consultant that was budgeted to complete that work. And they won't be getting a full overdue without that funding.
Go ahead, Barry.
I'm assuming that the other jurisdictions in the county, the cities, Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, Yelm, all of them are doing this type of review and update during the same time frame. So they're hiring consultants or doing in-house work on the same types of chapters that we're doing it on. Is there any effort to link our efforts with theirs and try to grab some of that information?
Yeah, is it okay if I take this one, Maya?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, there have definitely been conversations of where we can join forces. One of those that we just came up in the last few weeks is a land capacity analysis, kind of following on the heels of housing allocation methodology, really looking at a regional land capacity analysis. So that's still still in early conversations. One of the difficulties that the county has in partnering with a lot of our cities is they already have their housing action plans that they did just a few years ago. As you've heard through the joint plan updates, they received grant funding for that. They were on the hook for getting those done. The county didn't do one of those. It doesn't mean that we don't have policies in place. We have the Regional Housing Council. It just looks a little bit different. Their starting point is different than ours. And so,
Either did
Yes.
Lacey from what I saw.
well,
Yeah.
but yeah, those are definitely happening. If we
Yeah.
can find opportunities to leverage.
What I'm really thinking about is the areas of economic and health and land use, the ones that we don't have the money for right now. To look at what they're producing or getting from their consultants and see how that can be incorporated. Utilizing staff to flesh out some of these chapters.
Yeah, we could look into, I don't know if they're doing big overhauls of those chapters either. I think
Yeah, I don't either.
most of the jurisdictions are really focused on housing.
Yeah.
And climate.
Yeah, I know they are. I just didn't know if anybody, and there's quite a few communities out there where they're all doing the work for their respective communities, but a lot of it has overlap with the county, obviously.
Well, would it be fair to say that even though that we're not going to be looking specifically at these chapters, if the opportunity arises where some money shows up or something like that, it's not like it's off the table completely. If you find money, we're gonna bring them back in. But if the money's not there, these are the first to go.
Yeah, they were the optional elements. And so we have to move forward with the required ones. And we really needed additional funding to work with consultants or partners to do wholesale updates.
Commissioner Wheelie, go ahead.
Yeah, Maya, are you done? Is that the last slide? Or was there more you were gonna?
Pretty close to it. I guess I'll just finish up here real quickly I can't see if there's any public members online still, but ways to get involved right now. We have a couple of story maps on the website that talk about what our current plan has in it. And those will be updated as we start going through internal updates into 2024. We are really pushing our email list for this project. So we do have a project specific email list. If folks don't want to receive the general Thurston planning emails, they can sign up just to receive emails about Thurston 2045. And we have the visioning survey that Miriam mentioned earlier tonight, and that's open through the end of the year. And we're doing our first online push for that right now. So just within the last week, the emails have gone out and the Facebook posts for that. And then topic specific presentations going into 2024. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll stop sharing the screen and we can continue questions.
Yeah, so since the environmental stuff is, a heavy one, and it's sort of like the housing, a lot of the energy is going into that because there's definitely some new elements that you have to figure out how to even do as far as the new requirements. Can you talk a little bit about that, like how the recent legislation is impacting the work you're doing? I mean, I'm kind of curious, especially about things like it seems like I'm forgetting the House bill or what, the bill numbers, but it seems like one of the requirements would have a lot of an impact on the capital facilities planning, because aren't you supposed to be doing sort of a green infrastructure analysis that is going to change the capital facilities planning? The way it looks a little bit, because it has to have this kind of green element to it now. And I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of ways that new climate legislation kind of, it isn't just about like the environmental chapters. It kind of integrates into all of them in kind of sometimes unexpected ways. And I'm just kind of bringing forward the capital facilities planning as an example of that.
Yeah, and so I'm not I'm not familiar if there is a capital facilities component expressly spelled out in that House bill, but what I will say is that the scope of work for the climate grant monies we're receiving from the Department of Commerce is significant. There are a lot of studies that will be part of that. Some of that information we already have a very good starting point in Thurston County from our recent mitigation plan, but we need to do a lot more work on the resiliency side of that. And so once we have that information from some of those studies, whether it's just some new additions or completely new studies that we need to go through and have consultants complete, the integration will be across the whole comp plan. So right now our plan is to develop a new chapter that focuses on climate, and then all of the pieces across the comp plan, the big ones will probably be transportation. There might be some capital facilities changes, but most of that is to county-owned facilities, from my understanding, making sure we're using green infrastructure, EV charging stations, things like that, and also code changes. So there's going to be a lot of changes throughout the whole plan related to the climate bill and what that looks like, more to come. But that specific element, we have a team of 3 people leading that, and then hopefully we'll have a consultant leading some of those studies and draft updates. So that's a pretty big portion of the staff effort that's going into the work on Thurston 2045.
Yeah, so it'll just be kind of interesting to see how you can figure out how to connect that back to the community outreach and make sure that people are aware of where in the comp plan this stuff is coming in, and it's not necessarily just in that one chapter, you know, that they're gonna need to know and understand how it integrates throughout the whole comp plan.
And not just the comp plan is Maya was
Yeah.
alluding to. And I would say, starting here with our planning commission, like a general understanding that it's going to come in phases, like full on studies of the type that are referenced in the new climate bill. You can't get done in time to meet our deadlines for the comp plan update. So a full on climate risk and vulnerability assessment, or risk and vulnerability assessment or hazard assessment. We're gonna do as much as we can for the comp plan update, but that doesn't mean that the work stops June 30th, 2025. It'll continue, and the funds continue beyond that deadline. And if we have to circle back and update the natural hazards mitigation plan or the comprehensive plan or other plans, that will be reflected in the implementation plan. But the level of effort that is expected of us and other counties we just don't have the time and resources to complete. And I was actually just at a conference, and all of the counties feel that way. It's not just us. And we're going to be the first wave of counties out of the gate trying to meet all of these requirements. And we're way ahead of some of the other ones.
Doesn't Thurston County already have a climate vulnerability study that was done?
We have an adaptation plan.
Climate
It doesn't necessarily align with the requirements that are set forth in the new climate bill.
I'd like to go down to Commissioner Pessinger.
Jim or Barry, were you ahead of me?
No, I'm done. Jim.
Okay, so it was economics, health, and what was the third one that was getting likely dropped?
Future land use or integrating industrial lands report?
So that one I can kind of get by, but economics and health seems pretty dang important to me of the future of the county. And I understand your guys' restrictions, or not restrictions, but lack of, availability of funding and those types of things. But the health of the county seems pretty dang important. Economics, if we have a good economic base in the county, maybe we can start lifting these people up, and all of a sudden affordable housing is affordable because they have a better job or they can afford food or whatever. So, and I get it, and I'm just kind of spewing here, and I understand your guys's what you guys are going through. And by the way, Miriam, that was a great job on the outreach stuff. The foundation set there, I think, is very good. But that's just my thing. I don't know. Health especially. I mean, seems like a big vote. So, so here's my other thinking is, so does that mean it just reverts to what it is right now? In the comp plan, it just stays the same? Nothing changes?
For the most part, it would stay the same aside from if there are changes related to some of the other big elements like climate, housing, transportation that we need to do in those chapters. We won't be going in and doing a full update. What I will say is both of those chapters had very robust updates in 2020. We adopted the final changes to that. Yeah, 2020 was the year we adopted the final changes to that. And so the health chapter specifically, public health and social services kind of owns that chapter. That's their realm, their chapter. We haven't even been able to connect with them to find out how much has changed, but you would expect with everything that's happened in the last 3 years, there has been a lot that's changed. It's just uncertain if it's reflected in studies. And then the economic chapter, my understanding is there is some new information that could go into that chapter, but that's really the EDC is the expert to incorporate that information, not our internal staff. So we really do need the technical expertise and support on those two chapters from those departments. But absolutely, as Chair Casino said, if funding does appear and we have support and timing is not an issue, we can take those on.
Yeah, get it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Casino. I second Jim's comments about the importance of health. I wanted to go back, you don't need to go back to the slide, but I think about 3 slides ago, the bottom bullet point was about the internal team and said something about cross-functional or cross-departmental. Can you talk a little bit about the team, what size of it, how many staff members are going to be working on this, and how many consultants are planned to be hired, 1, 2, 3, however many, and also of these areas we're supposed to cover, where do you feel that team has plenty of expertise, and which topics is there lacking in expertise?
Yeah, so right now the team is mostly internal CPED staff because we haven't onboarded a consultant yet. Obviously, we're still going through that process. And with our internal staff, I want to say there's 16 of us. It's about 15 to 17 internal staff that are on that team. A lot of our technical experts that are involved on that team, we have the climate program manager on the county who is going to be heavily involved in the climate portion. We have stormwater experts, other water related experts, kind of natural resource wetland experts. And then my team under growth management services is primarily the land use focused group. So we cover our bases pretty well. We will be connecting with public health and social services where necessary for housing. We're kind of doing that. We're building that relationship outside of this team to start until we really get those housing updates underway. So we've had several meetings with PHSS and their housing coordinator and the regional housing council as well. And as necessary, we can pull them into this group as well to cross coordinate. So that's one of the areas where we'll need to beef that up a little bit moving forward. In terms of consultants on the project, it could be one. More than likely, it'll be more than one consultant, potentially 3 consultants doing work. We could have someone just doing environmental review, someone just doing housing, someone just doing climate. And so we'll have to see what kind of bids we get on the RFP. I've heard that consultants across the state are really strapped right now and working on a lot of projects. So we'll just see what comes out of the RFP bid that we get.
You say again, what were the top 3 topics for the consultants?
Housing, climate, and then the environmental review for the comp plan and EIS.
Who's doing transportation?
Maya, when you say that there's
ERPC.
about 16 people internally working on this, is this going to be, is it 16 FTEs or this in addition to other duties that they have and
It is most certainly not 16 FTEs. So Um,
We're giggling, 'cause that would be amazing.
We
yeah,
have-
so a lot of the people who are sitting on this team don't have any Thurston 2045 really kind of like budgeted to them, or it's less than 10% of their time. What I will say is the information to the board, I think it's around 3.5 to 4 FTEs working on this over the next 2 years. And that was the number that we brought forward with the scope of work, and that's provided we get consultant support on all of the areas that we need consultant support on. So climate, housing, the environmental impact statement. I heard one of the commissioners ask about transportation, that we're looking at outsourcing to TRPC since they have the regional expertise on that. And if we get all that consultant support, we can do the remainder of the updates of the plan probably with about 3 to 4 full-time employees. That is responsive to the board's request that we still have staff available to work on other docketed priorities. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. Most of my team will be working on this. So Leah, Andrew, Amelia, and a couple of folks from some other teams will also be leading chapters. The rest of the folks of that 16 are mostly just technical experts and resources.
Yeah, it's a tight budget. Please, Kevin.
Just a follow-up to that. Thank you for that clarification and detail. That's helpful. It sounds like the area most lacking is housing. And that is a complex and huge sections of our multiple chapters and big sections. Is there anyone outside of hiring a consultant there that we could be working with? I mean, and please don't say Olympia Master Builders, and maybe say Habitat for Humanity who's in the room. Are those possibilities?
Ashley, I'm not sure if you want to chime in on this, but we have had some conversations with Thurston Regional Planning Council. If we don't get a consultant on bid, there may be ways we can look at some regional partnerships to complete the work in that chapter, and then partnering with PHSS. They will absolutely be a big resource through this process anyways. But we might lean and rely on some of their staff and experts a little bit more.
Yeah, I think
Great.
there's technical analysis components, and that's where we really need support. And then there's sort of policy development, programmatic development, coming up with implementation plan ideas. And that's where I think it really is looking to our community partners. And they will be engaged regardless of whether we have a consultant on board, because they're the ones that have the on the ground experience.
Thank you.
Commissioner Day.
Could you speak a little bit to what it's gonna mean for the process to not include the future land use map?
Yeah, so that was an optional item that staff kind of developed and proposed to the board that would update our future land use map in the comp plan to have broad general buckets. So all of your residential zones falling into one future land use, all of your resource zones falling into one land use designation, and the implications of that for the community members who apply for certain types of rezones would be a quicker, more expedited process where they would not have to go through the full comprehensive plan amendment process in most cases. The ramifications of that coming off is that we would not do an update to our future land use map right now. So it would stay kind of a one-to-one. That's not to say that there won't be areas that don't change. Typically we work with our geodata team to do kind of a cleanup of areas throughout the county, make sure it's aligning with our parcel data, any other issues. There are a couple of park areas that need to be updated to be reflected appropriately on that land use and zoning map. So small things, small zoning changes, land use changes like that are still going to be implemented. But this broad update that was mostly in an effort to kind of make some procedural changes for our community members and create a faster process for them to move through, that is on hold. And we do have kind of a strategy where that could potentially be moved forward. It would just not be coupled with the periodic update that's due in 2025. It would potentially come following that.
I think it'd be pretty fair to say that this commission has found future land use maps to be really beneficial, especially as we just went through the joint plan process with a bunch of these people. So if there's some way that we could reprioritize that back into being part of this mix, we'd probably feel a lot better. But I know I'd feel a lot better about it. I think that's a pretty helpful tool.
We all vote for everything.
Well, not everything, but almost everything.
Well, I mean, the fact is that our community, our property owners out there would benefit from that greatly. In reduced, costs for permits and going through the process that you just identified. I mean, that was the reason that we all wanted to add that back into it. And the commissioners understand that, right?
Yes, they are aware of the ramifications of not including that update.
Commissioner, you have more?
Oh, just on that note, you know, Maya mentioned that there might still be opportunities in the future, and I would say that opportunity is the big word there, that if it isn't bundled with the comprehensive plan and all of this other stuff that we're having to do, then maybe it can be more of a community visioning process around future land use rather than just more of a let's update it for procedural benefit. So I am trying to see the opportunity in that one, that it might not get done on the timeline that we were anticipating, but maybe, you know, by involving the community, it looks different on a different timeline.
I'm just concerned because, I mean, most of the issues that I hear at the Board of County Commissioners meeting are land use issues. And the fact that they aren't looking at funding that to get that taken care of is concerning. I mean, that's.
I
Go
would
ahead.
add that about 75% of the land use and rezone requests that we have on our current official docket or kind of in the hopper waiting for future consideration to be added to the docket would not benefit from this update because they are requesting to go from residential to industrial. And so those types of changes would not, those would still have to go through a comp plan amendment process. So it's really only, you know, really only alleviate the process for your smaller landowner who wants to go from 1 to 10 to 1 to 5. And there's a good reason supporting that. A lot of the requests that we have come in within the last couple of years, I would say the last 3 to 4 years, we're seeing pretty significant rezone requests, and those would still need to go through the full process. So those are all things that'll get communicated to the board as they consider this and the funding associated with it.
I guess my point is that what we've heard from the community and from public hearings and everything else is one of the biggest problems our citizens in Thurston County have is the permit cost through CPED. And one of the things that we as a planning commission looked at a couple months ago when we were talking about adding certain things back into the docket for the 2045 was to address that problem. And now we're being told that it doesn't look like it's going to be addressed.
So I think on a separate track, there are many continued conversations about sort of the fee structure for all of
Right.
CPED, because I don't think the land use applications for comprehensive plan map amendments or rezones are the ones that people are voicing concerns around as much as other types of permits, you know,
Those types of
your
rezones are
conditional-
expensive.
they are, I mean, considering how much work goes into
Right.
them though.
Most of them have to hire attorneys to help them out with it or consultants.
Yeah, well, they're big proposals and a lot of community interest, especially when you're making, you know, or at least wanting the county to consider residential to industrial. So, but at least what I've heard at a lot of the 2 o'clock board meetings, it's more the hearings examiner process
Yeah.
being so much more expensive
It
than
is.
administrative review, which
Yeah.
doesn't affect any of the stuff that, you know, the planning commission sees.
When are we expecting the next docket update?
Maya, would you like to share the timeline for docket?
Sure, I'll share the timeline for docket. This is probably the first and last time you'll hear about docketing from me because I'll be on maternity leave when that's going on. But docketing will pick up in 2024. Typically, we try to start those in January, but because we have a couple of new county commissioners that will be coming on, they might start a little bit later. And the time frame for that process is usually kind of anywhere from 2 to 4 months to move it through that process. And so once we get some feedback from the board on what they would like included on the official docket, we will certainly bring that back to the Planning Commission as for your awareness of what the work plan update is. So the first half of next year, really, that process might take a little bit longer with some new commissioners. It's also a reset year. So in 2024, everything kind of rolls over and the board will get to vote which they want on, which they want to hold off for a future year, or if there's anything they would like to remove entirely.
Our current docket, we've done a pretty good job of knocking a lot of that out, which when I'm looking at this proposed or this 2045 proposed schedule here, you know, we're not doing anything for the first quarter for comp plan. So is the first quarter 2024 going to be finishing up what little stuff is left on our current docket, or can we jumpstart some of this 2045 stuff?
Yeah, so in terms of jumpstarting 2045, unfortunately, I don't think we'll have chapters ready to bring to you really before March. That's kind of the most ambitious timeline for our staff with the other things that they're working on. But considering the official dockets that are in place right now, just the quick and dirty, the development code docket, we have worked through so much of that. I think by the end of this year, we expect to only have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 official items left on that docket, and most of those are the UGA zoning ordinance updates, which Leah Davis will be leading, as well as some other staff. So those are kind of big undertakings that will come to the Planning Commission at some point in 2024. And we hope to start one of those at least in the first half of 2024. In terms of comp plan amendments, we've gotten a lot of work done this year, but the docket will not shrink so much because a lot of that work restarts, and then Thurston 2045 will obviously be added. So the joint plans we hope to have complete by the end of this year. That would fall off that docket. Some of the items that will still be on the docket are some individual land use and rezoning requests. There's a couple out there, the Beaver Creek, the Bar Holdings, and I might be drawing a blank on one. And then we have our Nisqually sub-area plan, and the external portion of Grand Mound is continuing review into 2024. So the UGA amendment piece of Grand Mound will not be wrapped up by the end of this year, but the Planning Commission has already reviewed and provided feedback on that. So in the first half of next year, potentially Bar Holdings and Beaver Creek, we are trying to stagger that with Thurston 2045. So one of your first items that you may see is the Beaver Creek proposal, and that's there's some work on that already going on.
One thing we could do with the Nisqually sub-area plan is, as it wraps up like its outreach phase, is do more of an update or setting the stage, so it's not brand new when the draft comes before you. So if that's something you'd be interested in, definitely schedule that at the top of the meeting.
I know we've gone a few minutes over. I have 2 kind of basic questions. Number one, I'm sorry, I don't know this already, but how do impact fees work in the county? I know in the city they're pretty robust. What are they like in the county? Do they have them in the county?
I do. I do not want to speak out of turn though. I would
Do you
really need to
know
follow up
what
with
the
Brett.
average is per new residents?
Oh, definitely. No, I mean, they look different because there aren't services. So there's like, the development fees are not going to be the same as what, the development impact fees are not going to be the same as what you see in the city. But I'd be happy to follow up and bring
We almost
information
need to
back
have
from
Brett
Brett.
come in for that, don't we?
I'm sorry?
We'd almost need to have Brett come in.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
explain that.
those are Brett questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
most of the impact fees in the rural parts of Thurston County are related to parks and schools and then transportation impact fees. And we work with Public Works mostly to collect that information and then implement it on the impact fee schedule.
Thank you. And the next question is for everyone, including other planning commissioners, but I keep hearing this phrase and I've thought about it a lot and I think I have my version of understanding it, but if anyone could tell me what keeping rural means. And I don't just mean like in the fantasy that we all have in our head of, farms are beautiful, but like in the reality that we deal with as planning commissioners and you deal with as planning staff, what does that mean? How can we possibly address that public concern?
And how it fits in with things like providing housing and, I don't have an answer, but I just want to throw that out there. It's like,
There is no answer.
I know just from my perspective that keeping rural to me means that you focus your density in very specific places and keep outside of those dense areas as sparse as you could, please.
Well, and I think right now, the industrial the industrial lands and what's rural industrial is a really important topic to be discussed, probably by the planning commission in some way. I think that's a really pressing issue, but I mean, this is an invitation for an observation from me, I guess, like from staring at maps. I think Thurston County, we have, the problem that Thurston County has is that I-5 cuts through rural Thurston because we have kind of it's different, like Lewis. I-5 is the industrial corridor, but then you hit Thurston County and, you literally see it on the satellite map that in Thurston County, South County is rural, right? In Lewis, it's sort of like it goes rural out from I-5, but we have kind of a T shape where the urban part of the county is the North County. And I think there's a lot of tension there. And it would be great, to be able to have a somewhat free-ranging conversation about that because it really touches on a lot of what we do. The fact that I-5 cuts through that and creates these pressures, especially with the pressure to convert to industrial land.
You're a former farmer rancher, you live in the county, how do you describe that?
I think what Chair Casino said makes a lot of sense to me, that it's about preventing development in the rural parts of the county that really more belong in dense parts of the county. That's what I think about.
Cool, that's helpful, thanks.
I grew up in rural King County. It was rural King County. It was unincorporated, incorporated later, like when I was in high school. And I think it is, my experience there would have been the exact opposite of, I think, keeping rural. It used to be like we were worried about dogs getting eaten by bears. And it just became a giant Seattle bedroom community, nothing but subdivided housing developments.
It's sprawl.
I mean,
Yeah.
I refuse to go back to my hometown. It's too hard to watch. And I think that's kind of.
Ashley, this is a question that I hope you can answer. I've been paying a lot of attention to the budget deliberations over the last month. And as you probably are aware, there's going to be some considerable cuts in the county on personnel and across all departments. So we're talking about the docket, which ties directly to staff availability. Thurston 2045, which ties directly to staff availability and a timeline that we have to meet. How are those cuts in personnel going to affect your staff?
At this point, we remain whole There was actually a board request to add 2 additional staff members to sort of help carry these docket items in addition to the comp plan update. I don't believe that those are moving forward. But in terms of like the staff that we have, we were able to be creative and we're whole.
Okay,
And feel very fortunate.
I want to give it back to Commissioner Day.
Yeah, sorry, I think I'm gonna tack way back. Question just came to me, I just remembered, but I was wondering what the county's thinking is on engaging with local tribal governments on the comp plan update.
Yes, I would love to talk about that, and then I'll let Miriam chime in if she has anything to add, if she's still in the room. I can't see completely. But we have connected with the tribes, the Nisqually, Squaxin, and the Chehalis, and offered them, you know, whatever works best for you to accommodate and meet with you. And so the response that we got was a standing monthly meeting, short, 30 minutes, and our first meeting with them is actually next week. So I'm already aware of some of the biggest concerns from some of the tribes, but the first meeting or 2 will be just an opportunity for them to kind of let me and a couple of other folks on our project team know what they would like us to bring back to them and things they're most interested in hearing about. And then those meetings will continue through 2025. So we have that set up. Myself and then Brian Benjamin and Amelia Schwartz will be leading that, and Miriam will also be participating on those meetings as well. Miriam, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'll just be looking both at the Chehalis and Squaxin tribes to look for similar events, like the Nisqually one. I knew about the Nisqually one from a previous life working on Joint Base with McCord, so I knew about that event, so I'm gonna look into similar events so we can just not just tap into the leadership of the tribe, but also the community.
Maya, would you be able to report back to the Planning Commission the tribal concerns on a semi-regular basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to bring that back. And I think we have some more Thurston 2045 on the 15th of November and the 6th of December. Is that the right date? So I should have some more information to bring back at one of those meetings that we can go over.
Thanks. Can the record reflect a double thumbs up?
You have more?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for staff on 2045? Do you guys have any more to present for us on 2045?
None from me. Thank you for having us tonight.
No, thank you guys. You're doing really great work, and it's showing. Well, with that, I'm going to move on to our next agenda item then, and that would be a staff update. And I believe that Manager Wright is going to provide that one.
We have a number of items. We're saving them up. We missed you. First, I want to present an idea. I pass around. We're trying to think of resources that might help as we're moving into this phase of comp plan. And so this is an idea that came from Amelia and Andrew on our team, and it was essentially to create a resource binder.
I don't even have to look at it to think.
I saw it across the table.
There
I
you
was like,
go.
oh.
So full copy of the comp plan, Robert's Rules of Order, you know, just a quick like training for new planning commissioners. And we were hoping that as new planning commissioners come on, we can use this resource. We, rather than mailing stuff out, we would love to be able to just slip that in the resource binder and have those available for planning commissioners when they show up. So it'd be something that would stay with us, but that we would get it ready, fresh for each meeting. I know the drawback there is like, you had notes you were writing, you can always bring in your own copy, but that way we could populate it and make sure that you have everything you need and that it comes back.
Will you keep a copy of that online as well?
Yep. So the plan would be if this is something that you all think is a good idea, and it's, you know, we can always change, we can add stuff. We wanted to start somewhere. I know even as you were talking about economic and health, I'm like, oh, I have the binder. I can look at the chapters and see what's in there. That you would also have that without having to make multiple copies or us having to print out lots of copies, at least of what's existing. So that way, if you do get proposed, you can look at it side by side. So it's not tablets. I'm sorry, Commissioner Day. It's
Let
a low
Let
tech.
the record show one more, 2 thumbs up.
This would be available, one for each commissioner when we come in for our meetings.
so it
for
would be-
references.
Yep, it would be at your
Awesome.
I don't know if you're gonna address this later, but I know one of the ideas that has been floating too is to try to minimize as much printing and mailing that goes out to the planning commission as we can. I don't remember what the numbers were, but your printing and mailing budget for the planning commission is appalling. As a taxpayer, I'm just. So,
I've kept my stuff in a stack and
Yeah.
it's now like.
yeah, you got a lot of room, yeah. And so if, I think in general, we're gonna try to move away from a lot of that printing and mailing stuff as we can, and this would be one of the ways to make up for that.
That would be awesome.
I hope I didn't steal your thunder on something there. That was
Nope,
one of your
not at
items.
all.
Okay.
We wanted to bring it so you got to see sort of what one would look like in draft form, and if this looks good, we'll start with next month.
So
getting them
the
ready.
question I would have is, how much earlier than 6:30 are you gonna have this available? So we might be able to come in early and review it.
Study sessions?
No, I mean, just. to be
Yeah,
able-
no, well, Tasha puts all of the nameplates out. I came back at 5:30 tonight, they were all out. So, I mean, we could set them up when we put out the nameplates.
Cause then we could come in a little bit early to review it and.
And I'm sure we could borrow them as well if we wanted to.
You can check them out, but we
Check
we
them out.
do.
Your library
And we
card.
can, you know, we can have a little library thing so we can track who's actually.
I just have to say that we do need to be mindful of OPMA stuff, so. You know, we can't open up at 5:30 and have 9 people show up, or 10 people
Oh.
show up and.
That is true.
Well, they can show up, they just can't talk to each other.
Sit in the corner, please.
We have breakout spaces and we'd be happy to show you to a breakout space. They're very cozy and you could sit there and study binder.
You know, I'm especially thinking about, you know, people coming on who are new and also for new commissioners. I think it would also be really helpful to have a kind of a reference library list of, you know, related documentation to various issues, like, you know, how I asked the question about the, you know, I thought that there was already a climate study, like a climate vulnerability study or whatever it was, you know, to have a good list of kind of what those key core documents are that are related to the things that we're doing. Cause I mean, we're supposed to already, you know, be familiar with that stuff, but we may not even know what that stuff is.
Yeah, a couple pages with the
But we're
links.
supposed to be incorporating it into our, you know,
Yeah.
into our work.
I think that's a great idea and
Yeah.
we can add that. And I think it's just it's a living, breathing thing. So as you
Yeah.
happen upon one, that is something easy we can add.
Well, what I would be looking for is a reference sheet, 1 or 2 pages with the title of the documents, the link to it on the website that you could email to us. And I keep that in a separate folder, so when I wanted to go look at a specific thing, I don't have to go to www.thurstoncounty.law and try to figure out where the link is for that particular document.
And I think Amelia and Andrew's idea was if we create this resource for the planning commission, it will hopefully be a resource for the broader community, especially
Sure.
those folks that attend planning commission on a regular basis to kind of understand what the planning commission's purview is, how they operate their business, so they would have access to those resources as well. So no, I think that's a great idea.
I imagine that you're gonna have that hosted in a specific place on the planning commission webpage,
good.
and then if you could also add that link directly to our agendas, probably wouldn't be a terrible idea either.
Okay. I'm just making notes so I don't forget. So next update, and staffing. Maya has a new person on her team. Her name is Anna Rodriguez. She just joined about 2.5 weeks ago. We're really excited in terms of adding capacity.
What's the name?
Anna Rodriguez. She comes to us, having worked for a few years, for the state of Texas, doing a very large, I think, the largest public health media campaign. And then moved up here, and worked with the Department of Ecology before joining us. Yeah, I mean, so she is the point person right now, building those relationships with our housing partners. And she has a ton of initiative and has just jumped in. So you'll probably see her at the next meeting. Didn't ask her to come to this one, but your next meeting is the Department of Commerce coming and providing an overview of all housing requirements. And so I've asked Anna to attend that, so you get to meet her as early as possible. We also are moving forward with filling our community agriculture program manager position. We've got a great pool of candidates. I'm so excited. So we're hopefully going to be holding interviews on that in the next few weeks and having that person come on board, and they'll really be leading or continuing to lead sort of updates in the agriculture component of the comp plan.
That was your second hat?
I'm still doing that job and the community manager job, so I would love some help. One other big update on that front, the ag front, we finally got the contract back from the state on the Habitat Strategic Initiative Lead Grant, which is the funding needed to look at updating all of our land conservation incentive programs. So that's to the tune of $385,000. It will be used to hire a consultant, hopefully not the same type of consultant that everyone else is going for comp plan updates. So fingers crossed. But yeah, that'll start up in the new year, and that was that kind of missing piece that you heard from community members this whole past year of the LTA zoning updates. So the ag program manager will also be taking that on. I think that's all for staffing updates. Sorry, it's gonna be me doing a lot of talking. Moving into like project related stuff. So Beaver Creek was mentioned. We're trying something new. That whole notion of like, let's go out to the community early and often and not wait till we get to planning commission in a public hearing. We're gonna try that with Beaver Creek. We're holding an open house before we really have like staff reports, anything like that, before really any analysis has been done, so that, I mean, when I say no analysis, I mean, we have an understanding of their proposal, and you know, obviously we're but what we really want is an opportunity for the community to share what their concerns are. So the open house, I brought just a few flyers. We are happy to do a special meeting notice if planning commissioners want to attend. It is happening next week. And if you all can't make it, we'll be sure to take good notes.
What's the date and time for that open house?
5:30 to 7:30?
On Wednesday, the 8th.
We purposely picked an off Wednesday. If you did want to attend, the proposal that Beaver Creek applicants are putting forth is setting aside about 168 acres in open space for conserving in perpetuity. And then the rest, of course, is that rezone proposal to rural industrial.
Well, let's take an informal poll on if any planning commissioners, we would have 5 planning commissioners that were interested in going.
I might be interested.
I don't think we'll hit 5, so we don't probably
Okay.
need to notice it, yeah.
But can I just, how can, I mean, wouldn't you need the industrial land survey to really do a good job with this? I mean, wouldn't that be kind of a helpful, I mean, wasn't that supposed to have been published in August? And isn't this kind of jumping ahead?
So the board didn't put any of the docketed rezone proposals on hold. The industrial land study was something that they provided funding to do. They thought it would be a helpful tool moving into the comprehensive plan, but they also docketed two projects that involve rezones from rural to, in this case, industrial. The other, Bar Holdings, is a mixture of commercial, industrial, and mixed density housing. So they're not on hold. And the industrial land study, we should have it here in the next month. And so before anything comes before the planning commission, that will be in hand. But in the meantime, we wanted to make sure that the community had an opportunity to share what their concerns were with the applicant.
How are the flyers getting out to the people?
They were mailed. And then we already have an email list of folks that were interested in the project. And the word is getting out. We're getting lots of phone calls. So, but yeah, we made sure to do a mailing and then we posted them down in the community. I think the applicant might have even shared, there's like a Little Rock Facebook group, and I think they were gonna share it there.
All right.
And then, okay, really quick, just updates on your projects that you spent so much time working on this past year. Wireless got adopted yesterday. It was like this huge, like, whoa, did it really happen? Hogue is on track to be adopted with the package of comp plan amendments, Yelm, the Yelm joint plan, the Olympia joint plan. And then things that we haven't gotten like a final thumbs up from the board on include the Shoreline Master Program, but they are pushing to get that completed by the end of the year, at least our portion, and that goes to the Department of Ecology and then it comes back. Forest lands conversion is going tomorrow for its briefing, hoping to schedule a public hearing and maybe even get a decision on that by the end of the year. Lacey joint plan. Hearing is taking place and hoping to, get a number of decisions from the board on all the pieces wrapped up in that by the end of the year. Long-term agriculture zoning project. Turns out all the soil survey maps got updated in September of this year. And so we don't have a GIS specialist right now. And that one is gonna get delayed. So we got
Just the mapping portion though.
Well, we got the okay to schedule public hearings for the new year, and to have the planning commission recommendation be one of two options being brought forward to the public. And it'll be essentially two public hearings, one on the maps or the designation criteria and one on the code updates. The reason they're going to be splitting them up is so that the board can make a separate decision on the code updates. And then if they want to spend more time on the maps and the designation criteria, they could do.
What time is the hearing tomorrow on forest land conversion?
So the briefing on that one is, I'm pretty sure it's 2 to 2:30.
It's a briefing, not a public
Yeah,
hearing?
that one's a briefing. Hearing, if the board feels comfortable moving forward, would be on the 28th. And usually those are 3:30. Oh, I'm sorry.
It is 2 to 2:30.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, you were all busy. Now the board is super busy. They're feeling it. They're very appreciative of the planning commission right now. And then finally, planning commission, the changes happening with the planning commission. I saved the best for last. How many of you got the email that I sent out about putting in an application for reappointment? Did it not go out?
About 2 months ago.
No, it should have just been a few weeks ago. Okay, we will resend that. So the
You got one though, Jim?
But not from you though, I got it. The commissioner's aide, I think.
Thomasina?
Yes.
I got one from Thomasina.
Okay,
Okay.
well, I'll make sure mine goes out to you all. It essentially is just so the board is moving forward, changing the composition of the planning commission as they switch to a 5-commissioner board. I thank those of you that participated in that process. I mean, I know that Commissioner Pestinger's schedule is what got adopted for the rotation of the planning commissioners. It will be a 10-member planning commission. So we will never have a split vote. I just know it'll happen. And appointments, 2 appointments by each of the commissioners on the board. 1
4-year terms
district,
instead of
1
6.
large, I'm sorry.
4-year terms instead of 6?
4-year terms, but they are going to be staggered coming on to make sure that we don't just lose all the planning commissioners at once. So that email that will come from me, and I apologize that it didn't get sent, has a link that shows the schedule, so you can take a look at it. And so what the Board of County Commissioners has asked is applications from planning commissioners that would like to be reappointed, so that they can consider those. And
What's the deadline?
They didn't give a deadline, but they can make up until the end of the year. Well, actually, I take that back. They're taking final actions on December 12th. In terms of the final board meeting. So it would have to be before that.
For new appointments.
for new appointments. And so in terms of the way the agendas are set, I would say probably December 5th. I will get clarity on that so I can include it, but I would say probably by the end of November so that we have time to get everything ready for the board to
So
make
that's
those
for
appointments.
any reappointments, which would mean all of us.
So
Well, 6 out of us. 6 of us,
6.
because there's only 3 seated county commissioners right now and they get 2 each.
Oh, cause they're gonna wait to the other 4 for
Mhm.
after the first of
After
the
the
year.
first of the year.
Yep.
Okay.
But those of us who are under existing county commissioners got redistricted.
Some of,
Some of us did,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'll have a new commissioner.
Me too.
Me too. You too.
okay.
So who else has been contacted by their commissioner? I know that some of the commissioners' aides, it sounds like Thomasina has reached out. Have others heard from their commissioner?
I've heard from, but not received an actual, please apply.
Okay. I can also just kind of check in and see if they plan on reaching out to folks individually.
Which will also mean that the first planning commission in January will probably not have. Well, it might have 6 people, but it won't have 10, so. Hopefully you can get a little bit of business done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that having a slower start to 2024 is not a bad thing. It's gonna take more than a few weeks for the new commissioners to.
Will quorum
to
be,
speed.
with a 10-person planning commission, will quorum be 6 or 5?
Quorum versus votes. Oh, geez.
I think it'll be 6, cause
You're-
Six.
I think.
I think it's a majority.
I think it's
Well, I
6.
know, it doesn't have anything to do with Robert's rules. It has to do with that thing in our.
The rules of
binder,
procedure.
With our rules of procedure
which is
defines quorum?
50% of majority of those appointed, so. if
Majority of those
6 are
appointed?
appointed, yes, appointed, so if 6 are appointed, it'll take 4 votes. A quorum, 4 people for quorum, 4 people for.
I don't think we'll have anything requiring a vote for the first 2 months of planning commission meetings. I mean, I think,
Just agendas and
oh,
Staff updates.
staff up, no, well, agendas
Well,
and
Discussions and deliberations,
yeah.
those need quorum.
what if we're just, I mean, so I'm thinking about something like the Nisqually Sudbury plan where it's really more of just an update of what we've done to date.
It'd just be agendas and meeting minutes mostly.
I guess we'll cross that bridge when we
Yeah.
get to it, look into it a little bit. All right, and then all current appointments are rescinded December 31st of this year.
So in the case of you, Commissioner, Wood, I think your.
I got
appointment might have been-
extended
Yeah,
to December, yeah, otherwise I would have been done, I wouldn't be here.
You would
right?
be here.
It's no-
Yeah, you're extended through the end of the year, like
Yeah.
everybody else.
Right.
Yeah,
any other questions on the planning commission stuff? I do apologize. I was wondering why I didn't hear anything. It's like, you all aren't that quiet. Cause I tried to send it out about the day after the decision was made. But I think that's all I had. It looks like it got sent on the 18th, but it's getting forwarded. Okay, if someone could check at some point and let us know if they didn't get it. Cause it's really important.
yeah, I know.
I've not
I know
gotten
I
it so
didn't get
far.
it.
Yeah,
Okay,
Is it
Okay.
proposed changes to Thurston County Planning Commission Board?
That was the old one.
yeah. So anyway,
anyways, you have any other updates for us today?
that's a lot.
All right, well, with that, we're gonna go through and look at our calendar a little bit. And so on November 15th, probably a little more than tentative, we're gonna have another work session on 2020-45 where Commerce is gonna come in and present on housing. So hopefully everybody can come in and see that because that should be a pretty good one. Is there anybody not expecting to be here on November 15th?
I don't think I'll be here.
Okay. And then on the 6th of December, Commerce will be back to present on climate. Anybody?
Oh, no, We did, since then, we have gotten confirmation. They will be here via Zoom. They
Oh,
won't gonna
via
be here
Zoom.
in person, but we will
Okay.
have them there, and then we will also have our staff working on the climate pieces to review what the scope
Okay.
is in the grant request.
So is anybody expecting to miss December 6th?
Inauspicious Pearl Harbor Day, I will be here.
All right, and then are we expecting to have a second planning commission meeting in December?
I don't think so at this point.
Generally speaking, we would skip the second one going into the holidays and
That
everything.
we don't have anything else prepped.
okay, well, we're not gonna cancel it yet, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if we do cancel the second meeting. Okay, well, then we'll worry about that. Next item on our agenda is anything for the good for the order. Please.
I'll just ask for 60 seconds of your time for a little story. I have been on 4 trips to the Portland area over the last 4 months and going again tomorrow. I've visited 5 different counties in the area, all surrounding Portland and the surrounding Willamette Valley area, and it's amazing to see the differences in planning. I remember 25 years ago hearing Portland being one of the cities that pioneered the idea of setting a boundary on urban growth. And I know that's had both, effects for the better and maybe effects for unintended consequences that they didn't want. But overall, I think more good than bad. And you could definitely see the differences between, say, urban planning and planning in general in Beaverton versus, say, Clackamas, which is, you can't even tell where the Clackamas Town Center Mall begins or ends. Whereas Beaverton is very well organized, even if they do have lots of money. I guess was just a reminder to me that the work we do is very important and it does have big long-term effects. So I just share that it was kind of inspirational.
And I will say in response to that, as a kid in Clackamas County, my interest in planning comes out of seeing that. And I was very, very young. So, yes. I remember the hillsides getting suddenly transforming into housing developments and seeing my favorite pond disappear. And it was very traumatic. So you never, it has a lasting impact.
They'll build housing and even strip malls on the Bay Area Ski Hill if they don't mind.
Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? I'm gonna invite Director Cummings up to address us.
Hello, Joshua Cummings. I am the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. I was just coming from the Fair Board meeting and thought I'd stop by here as well. And it just struck me again, how much I appreciate the work of all the volunteers throughout our community. I know it's long nights and lots of heavy topics. The Fair Board is trying to figure out how to stay alive, as it were, in terms of the fair event and the fairgrounds. I know the Planning Commission, you guys are dedicated to making sure our community, the land use goes in a way that's positive into the future. And I was either could go home or could go this way. And I decided to stop by here and just, again, express my appreciation to all the hard work. This last year has just been a whirlwind of successes in terms of providing recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners and then the board approving a number of items that have been heavy and weighty topics. Just recently, the wireless code being updated this week. So just know that you have my appreciation. And going into the new year, we're gonna have a whole new set of, processes and all the different things that we are expectant for but have never done in terms of having 5 Board of County Commissioners and a new planning commission kind of regimen set up. But know that the hard work from the staff will continue to try and bring you the information that you need to make positive and full recommendations to the board. And also don't forget the next Tuesday is election day. So that was it. I just want to say thank you.
Do you have any comments on what's happening to CPED's budget and possible impacts there?
So what I will say is December 15th is the final budget day. That's when the Board of County Commissioners makes their decisions. So everything is preliminary up until that point. We were asked to do a budget reduction. The general fund is stretched this year. We were able, I think, to get really creative in terms of the way that our general fund operates through community planning. So we have essentially two big sections. We have the permitting group, which is supposed to be 100% cost recovery in terms of permit fees, which it is. And then we have the community planning group, which is a lot grants and general fund. And then we also have a bucket for a surface and stormwater utility fund, which is paid through user rates and fees. What we were able to do is shift some of the general fund work and community planning over to some of the work funded through surface and stormwater that was appropriately funded and being worked through. We got a legal opinion on that, so that's a good thing. And that helped us to not have to reduce staff in the permitting group. So we were able to provide our reductions without a staff reduction. We're already pretty stretched in the permitting group. I don't know if folks have tried to get a permit through Thurston County, but our staffing levels are low and our codes are complicated. And that makes for really difficult. So reducing staff over there would have just added more burden to that process. But in terms of the countywide, the Board of County Commissioners has had to make some really hard choices to have a solvent budget, which they will. So I guess that's what I'd say on that.
Well, we're glad that you are probably not losing any staff.
Working hard at it.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be blunt, but I mean this with good intent. I think the last time we saw you, you were here with your cute young son who wanted to learn more about this. The time before that, you were here to try and chew us out. And I just want to say that, you know, there was concerns about conflicts with the staff. And I think that the communication between the Planning Commission and the staff and the way we were working together. And I feel like it's worth mentioning that those things I think were pretty legitimate concerns and complaints at times, but I would say there's been a massive improvement. And I would just point out that, you know, in the last 4 to 6 months, the staff has been fantastic and amazing to work with. And I really appreciate that transformation.
I appreciate that. And just for the record, I would never chew you out, any of you. But I do appreciate that we're all working together for our community. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything for Director Cummings?
I think one other thing that might, you probably already figured all of this out, but there is a really strong nexus between like long range planning and stormwater. And I think there could be a really, really solid argument that some of those stormwater fees could be put towards the comp plan updates. My day job is stormwater planning, and what I usually say is every stormwater problem is the result of a bad land use decision somewhere else. So harmonizing across those would be a tremendous benefit, and I think you could make a really, really strong argument for using some of those surface and stormwater fees for the comp plan update.
That's a neat way to think about that. Thank you. They're both under Ashley, so.
That's essentially what we were able to do. You will hopefully get to meet him soon, Brian Benjamin. He's working on this Poly Sudbury plan. He's also our point person for all the stream flow restoration work. And he's going to be the lead for the water resources and stormwater pieces of the comp plan. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have you meet him. And that'll probably happen.
So you can put in a resume?
That's also a great idea.
All right, well, does anybody have anything else for the good of the order? All right, having no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Fair board. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, take care.
Doing really well.
The girl we're gonna please.
Don't
wait for me. If you wanna check this out.
I saw it.
Kevin.
I really
have my money on Kevin.
It's like I can't get here.
Okay.
If I can get here.